We're answering your Dynasty questions on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Dynasty is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick between 2 and 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how's it going today?
It's going well. Crazy week, obviously. And obviously, we should probably touch on the Monday night situation. Brutal. I mean, obviously, it makes you take a step back and, all those things. But other than that, I am swell. How about you?
Yeah, things are going well here. We took the week off last week. I was out of town. We thank Kate and Marcus for covering for us. They did some great shows looking at the top running backs and wide receivers, kind of a reset as we head into the Dynasty offseason. But you're right. I mean, we have to mention what we saw on Monday night because it was unlike anything that we have seen on a football field ever, in our generation. Absolutely. Certainly with the injury and the situation with Damar Hamlin. And you're also absolutely right that fantasy, dynasty, everything we're going to talk about today, league titles and prize money and all of that stuff, just being very small very quickly. And I know personally I needed kind of a reset of that perspective. You hate to get it that way, but it was definitely a reminder that some of those things are not nearly as important as we sometimes think they are. Matt, we are going to continue with the show. We're going to continue with some Dynasty talk. Hopefully,
can I ask you a quick question? Did not sound cold or ignore the situation at all, but it sounds like most fantasy leagues are handling the situation as if it's done. I mean, I'm not ignoring the elephant in the room here, but we are in a fantasy podcast. I needed, there was a lot of big players for fantasy on that Monday night game. Like I needed, in a big league I was in, I needed Allen and Chase to get me 20 points to win the league. I was in the Super Bowl. And It sounds like most leagues, certainly the people at my fantasy league, are just moving on. Like you got the points that they got in the game and now it's over and now you lose, basically in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough spot for league commissioners. You think back and different circumstances, but challenging in some similar ways when we had all the COVID protocols and players being scratched at the last minute, and dynasty and fantasy commissioners, right? Fantasy commissioners had to kind of figure out how to handle that really without much notice in some cases. But, we adjust and you make the best decision that you can for your specific league. I don't think there's one easy way to handle it. There's nothing I could say that I would do for every single league out there. You're going to have obviously some games that were already essentially decided, leads that were insurmountable and whatever. You'll have some like the one you described where it was likely that you were going to come back and win that in normal circumstances. So there's been a lot of discussion about that, on Twitter today. And just for the record here, we're recording on Tuesday evening, a little bit later than normal for many different reasons. And the Damar Hamlin situation is just one of those. In short, I don't think there's one easy way to handle that. It's going to be a case by case basis. It's going to involve both the commissioner and the two teams that were in the finals. A lot of split the pot, scenarios are out there, co-champions. And I mean, that doesn't always feel good either, but again, this is a unique situation, but you're right. I mean, the NFL is moving forward as best as they can. This game, whether it's played at all, is not going to be part of the Week 17 slate. Mm-hmm. So I think as far as fantasy football is concerned, we got to move forward. And kind of make a decision on those games. It won't necessarily be an easy one, but again, that in some ways pales to the overall situation here.
Of course. The one suggestion I would throw out there is maybe some league votes that don't include the two teams and that it mattered to, like, should we split the pot or just live with the points that were scored and tough noogies, like your guys got hurt or whatever, but it's rough.
I mean, I will say, and others have said similar things as well over the past 24 hours or so. They're probably out there. I'm sure some of those jerks are out there that are really complaining and putting their league and their team first, mm-hmm. their fantasy team first. I haven't seen any of that. Honestly.
I haven't either.
I've seen.
And we know there's thousands of dollars in some of these. I mean, like big money in some of these.
Right.
Leagues,
well,
right? They're not
millions
leagues.
Of dollars
right,
in
some
cases. Certainly not the leagues I'm in.
Neither, right.
I've just seen understanding and compassion and common sense being played out in almost every situation, and I hope that's what we continue to see.
Mm-hmm. Let's dig in.
Yeah, as I said, we are going to talk some Dynasty. We hope this serves as somewhat of a distraction for you as we still watch this situation, as we still pray for Damar Hamlin and his family and the Bills. And if you're not ready for this, save this one and come back and listen later. We're going to answer some listener questions today. We'll do the same thing on tomorrow's episode as well. We got some good ones. So let's dig in here, Matt. Yep. First one comes from Trey. That's at Trey12Ross on Twitter. Trey says, where do the incoming rookies such as Bijan Robinson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba and Bryce Young fit into your way too early Dynasty rankings? Are they all top 10 pre-draft? Matt, because of the players he mentions here, I'm not sure how to read the question. If he's asking, are they top 10 rookies in rookie drafts? If that's the question, certainly they are. Bryce Young in super flex leagues, and Bijan Robinson is your 101 rookie pick, almost regardless of the format, at least at this point. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba looks to be locked in as a top 10 pick as well, probably even much higher than that. But again, because of the players he mentions, I wonder if he's thinking about Dynasty in general. We've had some talk on here. There's been a lot of talk around Dynasty circles that Bijan Robinson could not only be top 10, he could be the RB1 and a top 3, top 5 player overall. We'll talk more about that, but let's move over to Bryce Young. You look at the top 10 Dynasty quarterbacks right now: Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Hurts, Lamar, Burrow, Fields, Kyler Murray. Tua is quarterback 9. I'm looking at December Dynasty ADP from DLF, and Dak Prescott is quarterback 10. Trevor Lawrence certainly deserves mention. He's currently at 11. Does Bryce Young fit in that group right now? I'm not ready to put him that high. Are you?
No, not even close for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're asking, are these in the top 10 of their position? Bijan absolutely is. JSN isn't close because there's so many wide receivers.
Right.
Young might be close. I mean, but the names you just mentioned are all slam dunks for me over Young. You have to assume where he goes isn't going to be super favorable. Houston, maybe Indy, someone maybe trades up for him. Who knows? And I'll be honest. I mean, I need to study these guys a great deal more, as with all the rookies. His size really bothers me. And when I watch Tua get hurt time and time again, and some of these, Kyler at the end of the year.
Fields.
At least Fields is a bigger guy, but I mean, like some of these small quarterbacks, they take a beating, man. I mean, I'm a little worried about Pickett's health. I'm certainly worried about Murray. I mean, these guys that aren't big, strapping guys, I am not real excited to invest in, and I'm feeling stronger about that than I did a year or two ago.
Yeah, that's fair. We look at those quarterbacks. I named 11 there. You've got Deshaun Watson at 12, Trey Lance at 13, and then you've got a pretty sizable gap to guys like Kirk Cousins, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith. So, I mean, I think pretty easily we're going to be able to slot in Bryce Young, and really any of those notable rookie quarterbacks right in that range, basically alongside last year's QB1, Kenny Pickett. Who is quarterback 15. So I don't think Young or Stroud will be top 12 quarterbacks, certainly not top 10 quarterbacks, but they'll be just on the outside. And that's really due to the cliff that we have there after the top 12 or 13 quarterbacks.
Last nugget I have on this question is I'm not even certain Young will be my number one rookie quarterback. I mean, I want to see landing spots. I want to work into these guys. Could be Levis. I mean, it could be Stroud, whomever. And I was about to ask you before you said that, would you take Lance or Young? I think that's where I start to consider it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking right now, I would take Trey Lance.
Me too.
You know, we know the situation, and it's a good situation for Trey Lance. And I'm worried about Bryce Young's size as well. Not to say that he can't succeed or play well at the NFL level, but you're right. The potential for injuries is just scary. I also agree with you. He is my quarterback one right now, but he and CJ Stroud are really, really a toss up. And the way we saw CJ Stroud use his legs in that national semifinal game was certainly encouraging, something we hadn't seen a ton of. So Trey, they're all three guys, Bijan Robinson, Smith and Jigba, Bryce Young in super flex rookie drafts. Those guys are all certainly top 10 rookie picks, probably top 5. But if you're thinking big picture among the positions, Bijan, yes, Smith and Jigba, not even close, again, because of the depth of the receiver position. And Bryce Young, no, but in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And Young would not be a top 10 non-super flex pick for me amongst the rookies, probably.
Right. Yeah. Not even a first rounder. For me. Agree there too. We got several questions from our buddy Murray. That's at Laxatives Murray. The first one.
Do you know that joke, by the way?
I do. You had to explain it.
Okay. Yeah.
He's always good for a few questions when we do these episodes, and I did not know it, but you explained that. So yeah, that's a good one. The spell check.
Latavius turns into Laxatives.
Yeah, Latavius.
This is a Christopher Harris thing. Yeah.
So Murray says, and this is a good question again, when you think big picture and you think what we've seen over the past couple of days with Damar Hamlin, this becomes even more important, I think. Murray says, how do you deal with end of season fatigue in dynasty leagues? How long of a break is too long? Matt, what do you think about this one? I know your answer is probably different. You have a different different type of fatigue because you're not only managing some dynasty leagues, but you're creating content for dynasty and fantasy football as we do these shows, and you do writing and obviously you're covering
football, right?
Yeah, and you're covering the Pittsburgh Steelers and the entire NFL as well. So your answer is probably different, but what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm not the best person to ask because I wish I was a little more dialed into my dynasty leagues during the season than I have time to be. Unfortunately, I set aside an hour and then I update it for getting my lineups in, checking the waiver wire, but I'm not on the sites and working it as much as I would like. And that I know that hurts me, but such is life. It's football season and I have to make a living. That being said, I will say my least favorite thing about fantasy football probably is this time of year when it matters most. And the Monday Nighter is an extreme example, so I'm not even going to use that. But, the nonsense of, is Jacksonville going to play their guys this week? Are they going to play a half? Are they going to play some? Are they going to sit them? Or are they going to wait till week 18 when it doesn't matter for us in fantasy and all this money's on the line? And that's what I like least about fantasy in general is the uncertainty of those things, let alone injuries and whatnot. But those things we can deal with. So it does kind of wear me out this time of year of like, man, I had the best team in the league and I lost because Derrick Henry and my other top 3 guys all sat because their teams stink, so I do kind of like to take a step back after the year.
Yeah, I think that's good perspective. And you touched on some things there that we'll actually cover and get to in another question. So I'll save those. But
okay.
As far as Murray's other question there, how long of a break is too long? I think that's really, that's another situation that's case by case. And I don't think there is a break that's too long. If you're, this is supposed to be something we enjoy, right? Something that we love.
Yeah, right.
If you're at a point where you're not loving it, you're not enjoying it, if it feels like a burden or something you have to do, then don't do it, right? It's really as simple as that. And if you want to take 6 weeks off and wait until we get to the NFL Combine, then do that. Sit back and enjoy the playoffs and don't worry about fantasy football. But
and it won't hurt your team that bad.
No. Well, totally agree. In a lot of leagues, we're not going to see waivers running for the next month, 2 months, maybe even 6 months. We may not even see trades, trade talks going on yet at this point. So I think this is really an individual question. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. There's plenty of people already digging in, making those trades, even doing startup drafts. That's good too, right?
Sure, if you love it.
Whatever works for you is the right answer here.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to the Senior Bowl this year, and I'll be looking at running backs going, I want him on my dynasty team. I'm going to be turning my attention to the draft.
We've got a lot of other great questions. We'll get to those right after this.
Folks, I've told you often about Prize Picks. They're a great sponsor for the Locked On Network. And what I love about them is I don't play against a bunch of random people I don't know that might just get lucky. It's just me versus the lines they create there. Like, for example, is Pat Mahomes going to throw for more than 300 yards? Is Derrick Henry going to rush for under 95 yards? Cooper Kupp, is he going to score a touchdown this game or not? Give me yes or no or whatever, and I think that's a lot easier than, boy, I put my lineup in and I hope that people I don't know basically get lucky or outplay me or, so that's not my favorite thing about, that's definitely my favorite thing about Prize Picks. So how it works though, is you pick between 2 and 5 players. And if they will go score more or less than that projection, like I mentioned, you'll win up to 10 times your money. It's a great deal. Again, you're not competing against other people. They offer projections on any sport you've ever heard of. Of course, NFL, NBA, PGA, college sports, women's college basketball, soccer, esports, disc golf, cricket. If you're a cricket expert, I bet you could clean up. Entries are made in 60 seconds or less. That's even a stretch. Safe and fast withdrawals, which is important. Right now, they're operational in 30 different states as well as in Canada. So download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepick.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users, use our 100% instant deposit match. That's up to $100 with promo code Locked On, all one word. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks give you $100. If you deposit $1, they'll give you $1. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
Thanks again for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday. Local insiders cover the weekend's games with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Matt, let's continue to answer some questions. Next one comes from MB Football. That's at Mikey B Football on Twitter. And he says, does your roster construction change over the offseason compared to the end season or the regular season? He says on his specific team, he's loaded at running back, but curious how he should move on without knowing playing time come 2023. I think that's a great question specifically for the running back position. And we've said it here that both of us are starting to value that running back position as a year-to-year thing. So MB Football shares his specific running backs: Swift, Mixon, Jamal Williams, Pollard, Gus Edwards, and Deontay Foreman. I think we start making some projections, and Swift and Mixon and Pollard feel pretty safe as far as dynasty assets.
Kinda.
Well, you're worried about what Swift's playing time, Mixon
usage? Yeah. Could they use a 3rd round pick on a running back in Cincinnati? What's the Pollard situation like? None of those guys are locked in stone to me.
Well, I think the good thing for his specific team and in general for anyone is that these players still have some dynasty value and pretty significant dynasty value: Swift, Mixon, and Pollard. So I don't think it would be a bad idea to pivot off of those players for assets that you feel are safer, which probably means wide receivers. If you're in a super flex league, it means quarterbacks. And not that we don't see injuries or that we don't see changes at those positions, but yeah, I mean, the running back is just so volatile. We've talked about DeAndre Swift as a top 2 or 3 dynasty running back, even within the past few months. And now that looks crazy to think about that. So yeah, the running back value changes so quickly. If I'm holding players like that, I'm probably trying to cash out, whether I'm getting lower level running backs plus picks or plus receivers. Actually a guy like Jamal Williams, who he also has on his roster, those are the players that I would rather be buying, because they're so much cheaper. And even if something changes and they don't hit next year, they don't return the same type of production that we saw this year, you're not losing as much. You're not paying multiple firsts for a guy like Swift. You're paying, 1 late second or a second and a third for Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And that's basically what I was going to say too, is I think this is a good time of year over the next month or two before free agency hits, before the NFL draft, where I might want to cash out on a fair amount of my running backs, turn that into receivers that I feel they're just more stable, as you mentioned, super flex quarterbacks, and definitely draft picks. It's kind of like take your stocks, turn it into cash for now, and then go on a buying spree of running backs when you kind of know where everyone's landed.
Yeah, very good point. Matt, we've got one more question to get to, and we'll do that right after this break.
All right. I have also told you guys quite a bit about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. The only place I go, really. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, college bowl season, basketball, World Cup, all that stuff is available. I mean, hockey, anything you want. They've got it all at betonline.net. Also, if you love sports podcasts, which I have a feeling you might, you can even find those at Bet Online as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Matt, our last question of the day comes from our friend Jeff. That's at Jeff Lambert 77 on Twitter. Jeff says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on cutting back dynasty leagues. What's the PC or appropriate way to move on from teams that you no longer have the time or energy to manage properly? Yeah, this is the time of year where this topic becomes very important. You see lots of turnover in dynasty leagues. We think about a dynasty league as a long-term commitment, but that's not always how it works. In fact, that's rarely how it works for many people. As you get to the end of the year, and going back to the previous question that we had about fatigue, maybe you're running 10 or 15 or 20 dynasty leagues or teams, and you think, I just can't do this anymore. This was not fun. I think the first thing I would say is take that little break. The break that Murray mentioned, before you quit half your leagues. Maybe you're angry that you had a bad beat in the playoffs, or something didn't go your way, or you're just feeling that fatigue in general. Before you quit a bunch of your leagues, I would say take that break, take a week, take a couple weeks, and kind of reflect and then come back to it and make that decision. But in general, and as somebody who runs and commissions a bunch of leagues, I mean, I try not to let it bother me when people quit a league. It's
we've all kind of been there,
Right. We've all been there. It's similar to really, any kind of relationship that you might have. If the other party is not, 100% invested, then you're better off moving on anyway, right? If you have an employee that wants to quit and you're trying to convince them to stay, that's just not going to be a good situation for anyone. Yeah. So same thing in a dynasty league. If you're in my league and you don't enjoy it, you're probably not being a very good manager in general anyway. So it becomes better for both sides to get that fresh start. As far as the right way to move on, communication, obviously. And even though I suggested taking a week or two, I would also say the earlier, the better, that you can let the commissioner know. So, I've already had a few people let me know that they're moving on and stepping away from teams in some of the leagues I run. And again, that's in almost every case that's a no hard feelings situation. You just have to understand that that's better for them at this point. And even if they eventually go out and join another dynasty league, that's a separate situation. You can't, you can't hang on to that. Right.
Yeah. My only two things to add to that are, as you said, if the reasoning or your excuse or whatever is, hey guys, I'm just in too many leagues. I enjoy this too much. I take on more than I can chew. I think everyone says, I get it. You want to at least give as much attention as you possibly can to the leagues you're in. And then I also think that, like, I'm in 7 or 8, I would prioritize them. I definitely want to stay in these 3. These 2 could maybe go. And, I think we've all been in leagues that aren't commissioned great, like, hey, can you get the playoff bracket in? Hey, can you get the draft order for me, please? Can we update the software? Like, those are my first cuts.
Yeah. Very good point. A lot of times you already know if you do need to cut back, which ones are going to be the first to go.
Yeah.
Matt, that will do it for today's episode. Thanks everyone for listening. Please make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.